Have you ever worked with a student who wants to be with peers but just doesn't quite know how to join in? Or maybe their behavior, like hitting, pushing, or walking away, gets in the way of making those connections? In today's video, I'm going to walk you through a real consultation we did with a student named Matthew. I'll share what we saw, what worked, and the practical strategies that you can use tomorrow to support students with similar challenges. Hi, I'm Tara Warwick, an occupational therapist and consultant. I work with schools, teachers, families to support children with autism and other developmental needs. On this channel, I share real stories from the classroom, along with evidence-based strategies that anyone can use to help students thrive. If you're new here, don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss future videos. So let's talk about Matthew. Matthew is a student in an elementary school. This is his second year in school, and his team has made a lot of progress since last year. He has words, he can speak, but he struggles to use those words to communicate effectively. He's behind his peers academically as far as we can tell. He does have a one-on-one helper with him throughout the day. One thing we noticed right away with him is that he loves imaginative play. He loves dollhouses, figurines, playing make-believe. He's much more vocal when he is interacting with his figurines. He also likes being around other kids, but his way of joining in sometimes looks like hitting, pushing, touching peers in a way that causes concern, which is why they asked us to come out. So during our observation, we saw him in the general ed classroom, we saw him in music, we saw him at recess. In the general ed classroom, he was lining up with his classmates to head to music. Sometimes he would kind of bump into them or touch them on the back. So it showed us that he could follow some routines and stay with his peers. In music class, at first, he stayed off to the side, played with his toy by himself instead of joining the group. His parents said that this often was the case, that she just kind of lets him play, which I get. He was happy, he was playing. However, we challenged her, and so we coached her through coaching the peers. So if we were to go up and say, hey, Matthew, come sit at the rug, he was going to tell us no. So instead, we coached the para to coach the peers. So she went over to the peer and said, hey, come ask Matthew to play. So the peer's like, sure. A peer wanted to help. Peer walked over there, grabbed Matthew's hand, or asked him for permission and said, hey, do you want to come sit at the rug? Immediately, Matthew got up and came and sat at the rug. It was beautiful. On recess, he started off by just playing by himself. Eventually, he would move closer to peers and kind of try to join in, although his attempts often were like hitting or touching them on the head. From our perspective, it was Matthew's way of showing that he wanted to play, but he just didn't know how to play. And then when it's time to transition back from recess to the classroom, we all know that can be really hard. As transition, and especially transitioning from something that he likes to something he doesn't like as much. At first, he resisted coming inside, but once again, we brought out the peer coaching. And so we had the paraprofessional coach the peer to go over and get Matthew and say, come on, let's come inside. So the classroom mates helped him get back inside. So once we were inside, he immediately walked in the classroom where he was before. It gave us an opportunity to really work on some strategies for communication for him. So we did some simple sabotage to his play. He was playing with his figurines. And like I said earlier, he has a lot of words that he would use, but he wouldn't use them to say what he wanted. Like, I want this, or I don't want this, or I need help, or I need a break. So we were gonna work on just that initiation. And so he was playing with the little figurines. We would take the figurines and hold them just briefly and prompt him to say toy or doll or Spider-Man, whatever we were holding, and because he could imitate our verbalizations really well. And so we would hold him, we would model, say doll, and then as soon as he said that word, we would give it to him. And then gradually we were able to say want doll or want Spider-Man. So we were able to increase his spoken language. And so after we did this consultation, these were our top recommendations for the team to reduce the behaviors, because that's usually why we're involved, is because people are concerned about the behaviors. But we know that just addressing the behavior is only a Band-Aid. What we really have to do is address what is happening beneath that behavior. What's the why behind this? So we first said, number one, functional communication. He needs to expand his verbal language. We need to provide him with more opportunities, play-based sabotage, to give him power in his voice. because he has a lot of words. He's just not using them to communicate. So we want to make sure that we are focusing on that communication. We also recommended a visual schedule. He seemed kind of hesitant on those transitions, not knowing what was coming up. He would follow the kids, but we thought it would help him be a little bit more independent if he could see what's coming up. Plus, his schedule is different than the other kids. So some days he leaves earlier for therapy, some days he comes later. So having that schedule would help him understand what that day looked like. Number 3 is lots of peer coaching. The kids in the classroom, and most kids really want to help, they just don't know how. And so we really recommended working with the peers to give them scripts, give them ways to be involved with Matthew, and give them responses when Matthew does have behaviors. The other thing was more positive reinforcement. So he loved the social reinforcement. He also, like I said, he loved playing those little figurines, but he had a hard time at the table doing work type activities. So we said, balance that. Let's show him, let's do a little bit of work, and then you can go play with your figurines. And then those small chunks of time for academics, followed by more positive reinforcement, where he could clearly see, I'm going to sit here for a couple minutes and then I get to do something I enjoy for a few minutes. Gradually, you want that work time to get longer and the reinforcement time to get shorter, but right now we just want to pair that. We also suggested that make sure we're using simple instructions, because often what would happen is people would walk up to Matthew and said, do you want to come outside or do you want to come to the table, right? That's a yes or no question. What would he say? No, okay? So instead of saying, do you want to, instead of giving him yes, no questions, instead, either just holding his hand and directing him to that way, giving him choices. Do you want to sit in the blue chair or the green chair? Or saying, do you want to walk with me or do you want to walk with little Sarah? Okay, so giving those simple instructions versus open yes, no questions. Okay, so in summary, he is making progress. He's done really well over the last year. He loves being around his peers. He loves that imaginative play. However, we know he has behaviors because he doesn't always know how to interact with peers. He has difficulty communicating. So we are going to focus on helping him communicate, helping him learn those social strategies, increasing the predictability and structure for him through those visual supports, increasing that positive reinforcement so we can work on more of those academic skills. So if you found this case helpful, please give it a thumbs up, share it with others, check out the freebies and all the information that I have in my link in my Stan store, and I will be posting more of these videos next week. Thank you.